All right, all right. Welcome back to In the Future. And today's episode, we are talking about something that impacts all of our lives, even if you don't really feel it from a day to day perspective. You know that companies online, everywhere, even offline, when you go to stores, are collecting data on you, whether that be your purchasing data, your behavioral data, anywhere from across the browsers to offline. Customer data is so valuable. Now, what if we turned the table on companies and said, hey, people's data is super important and super valuable. What if we charge companies, or you charge companies as an individual, to start allowing companies to leverage your data, A, for their research and for even targeting and messaging you? What are your thoughts on that, Max? What does that make you feel?
It makes me feel that it's hard to disagree with that, right? For years now, a really long time, probably even before all the social media websites and all of the tech companies really got really good at capturing data and reselling that data.
Mhm.
They've never really paid for it, right? And so it's really interesting to think about if you think about social media in general,
Mhm.
or any product where you're not paying for it, where it's free, right? A
Mhm.
lot of people have kind of caught on to that, where they're like, well, if the product is free, then the chances are you are the product.
Mhm. Totally.
A-
That's a classic
And
line.
and that tells you everything you need to know about why you are the product, right? Like, how are they making their money? It's off of the data, it's off of your behavior, off of your usage. It's reselling that data to third parties. And so I couldn't agree with you more. It's been such a long time where people have essentially been robbed of their data, right? You could, as
Mhm.
as a company, you can argue, well, yeah, but you get this product for free. Okay. But to what extent
In
do
some
they
cases,
really
yeah.
use to what extent do they really use that data? How much more are they getting from it? So there's some arguments on both sides, I would say, that that as a conglomerate I can make to argue their point. But it's difficult to challenge the simple statement that people should get paid at least something for their data,
Mhm.
right? To even out the scales just a little bit. How would you approach it though? What do you think data is worth? Do you think that we need some kind of a system that tells you, like you as a male X age, you're active in these activities, or you have a salary of X, things like that. Like, are depending on which column you fall into, that's how much your data should be worth. Is all data now going to be
Mhm.
paid for? Are you doing it to earn income off of it? Are you doing it? Are you
Interesting.
demanding to be paid? For what are the reasons? Right. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So what are the reasons? I mean, well, let's start with, I think a browser was actually doing this for a while. And I think it just disappeared into obscurity. I forgot what the name was. I think it was called, I don't, does that sound familiar? There was a web browser that would pay you for browsing the web and collecting your data. You ever, does
Not to
that,
me. You have mentioned this before, but I haven't
okay.
I haven't looked into it.
Okay, yeah, because I downloaded it on an old computer for sure. And I remember thinking, oh, yeah, why wouldn't I do that? But like, I guess it just didn't kick off and it just, went away to obscurity. Like, just doesn't, I guess it didn't work out, or had people lobbied against it. I'd like to dig in and find out. But back to your question about like what factors would we even leverage to measure or charge people, right? Like, is it demographics? Which, by the way, I don't think that's going to be the case. I don't think we're going to charge based on a demographic. However, although now that I'm saying that out loud, I can see how high spending individuals could actually end up being more valuable, in the sense of, like, you've got Spencer and Max. Now, Max spends, if I know that Max spends $200 on groceries every month, but Spencer spends 50. I know these numbers are low in our world, and Spencer spends 50. As like a person who owns this, well, I guess in our world, we don't own the data, right? The company wouldn't own the data. You're right. Actually, you know what? I'm thinking about it. We would have to figure out that data model, that business model. but why would we charge you more? It's not like you're going to say, hey, I spend more on groceries than the average person. You should pay for my data more, unless there's some way to like enforce that. Like if I'm a loyal customer, for example, if I love video games and I buy video games every month, if a video game company wants to target me, I understand how valuable I am. Maybe I could charge a little bit more, but again, how would I charge them? I don't know. Maybe it's surveys that they send out on a regular basis, or it's a consent form on one of their websites. I think we have to think through a little bit of what more of what that looks like. But one thing I was going to add, no, before I pass it on to you, is also I think people just aren't aware of how valuable their own information is, even without putting a monetary value on it. Like people don't really get it, right? Like they don't understand. Like, oh, I'm on the internet. Like, who cares if people are tracking me? I don't have anything to hide. Well, no, you don't have anything to hide, but I can leverage what I do know about you to sell you things, to advertise you things, to basically influence the way you think. That's in a way that can go ahead and be beneficial to me and potentially harmful to you. Potentially, not always the case. It's not as insidious as it sounds, but I think people need to, if people could understand how valuable they are. I mean, people pay hundreds of, I know banks pay like $100 per person to get you to be a credit card customer, for example, right? And that takes understanding who you are to even turn you into a customer many times.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So I I don't believe that everyone's data is worth the same. It simply cannot be, right?
Mm.
Because
Okay.
let's say you as a parent with kids, your
Mm-hmm.
data, or even with teenagers, right? Like your data is much more valuable because you are a decision maker, and if we can capture your decision and influence that, you're going to be buying much more. You're going to be buying groceries. You're going to be buying a car. You're going to be buying potentially a house, right? So not
Yeah.
everyone's data is created equal. To your other point, yeah, it all comes down to people don't know how their data people don't know what their data is worth because they don't know how their data is used, right? So that makes
Mm-hmm.
sense. Like they just can't wrap their mind around it unless you're in the advertising business, what that's actually being used for. It just seems so abstract.
Mm-hmm.
To your other point, yeah, it's depending on which purchases we're talking about, like a let's say a credit card, it's all about the lifetime value, right? If it
Mm-hmm.
costs me, like I will
Yeah.
gladly pay $200 $300 for you if I know that you're gonna sign up for my credit card and I'm gonna have you
Totally.
for the next 10 years and I'm gonna be earning money off of the interest. Especially if you're the type of person who only pays minimum payments, right? That is much more valuable
Mm-hmm.
to me than someone who uses the credit card and then pays it all off at the end of the month. That's not really worth much, right? So
Mm-hmm.
like there's so many nuances, so many details. It's fascinating. Like think about there was this famous case. I think it was hmm, I want to say it was Target, but I'm not really sure. Some retailer, some supermarket or something like that, they got a I remember it was let me see if I can think through this. So this father got a mailer in yeah, a mailer was sent to his house that was targeting his daughter. And in the targeting, they were selling diapers. And his daughter wasn't pregnant. There were nobody was wearing diapers in the house. And so he called the
Mm-hmm.
supermarket furious, saying, "Why are you influencing my daughter to become pregnant?" Right? And what they later found out was that the behavior that she was exhibiting in her shopping habits predicted that she was actually like she was behaving as someone who was pregnant and who was preparing to for that stage of life. And guess what?
She
She actually
was.
was pregnant, and so her actions were
Of
actually they were much
course.
clearer than that. And so then he called back the
Mm-hmm.
supermarket or whichever retailer it was and kind of apologized for it. Highly recommend looking that up online. It's just a
Okay.
fascinating case. That's very interesting. I and also I mean to your point about how do you control it, right? Any website you go on these days, there's a nice little cookie message that comes up that says, "Hey, you accept, reject, all of
Mm-hmm.
that." And so if people imagine that becomes the tool, right? People
Hmm.
are just going to consistently going to say reject, reject, reject. Does that bother these retailers and these companies enough to the point where they say, okay, we're not actually capturing any of this data now. We need to do something about this. And lastly, I remember we spoke about this. I remembered on which episode we talked about this. It was the death of the third party cookie,
Right. That's what. Okay. Yes.
where
Yes.
we were
Yes. I do
doing
remember this now.
we were. But by the time this episode airs, the predictions for 2024 episode is going to air as well, and so that's
Have
where people
that.
are going to see it. But
Yep.
that's such a major part of it, right? Like when the third party, you can explain it because you're close to it. But when the third party cookie officially dies and is banned, how are companies going to start collecting that data that they use for targeting and retargeting? They're going to have
Mhm.
to go with more of like a first
Party.
cookie kind of approach. Like
Direct.
I need to directly ask you, I need to survey you, or
Hmm.
just say, hey, are you willing to get paid in exchange for
That.
your browsing history or something like that? That
Right.
could be a future that's not too far off for sure.
Yeah, that's interesting thing that you mentioned there at the very end with the like, hey, can I pay you? I wonder what that would do for brands also. Like, if you're the first, like from a strictly business financial perspective, like that sounds probably terrible. Like a CFO would probably be like, no, hell no, don't ever offer to pay for their data. Are you kidding me? But from a brand perspective, if you pioneer that, then your brand looks like you're on the good side of this quote unquote battle, right? Like you understand, like ethically you're in good standings with the public, which might make people actually in the long run more loyal to your company. If I say, for example, if we have, let's just say, Walmart versus Amazon, but Walmart says Amazon wants to compete with Walmart, and Walmart says, hey, look, we respect you and we understand you, like let us pay you for your data, right? Couple, let's just give us some basics about you and we'll give you $50. People might be like, oh wow, and I'll shop at Walmart because they respect me, they paid me, and ultimately it looks like they care about people versus Amazon. And by the way, I'm not saying this is going to happen, and Amazon gets, has a part of their market share actually cut out now because people are like, forget Amazon, they don't even care about us as customers, right? They're tracking us, and they're doing who knows what else with that data. And what going back to the thought about like monetizing the data and what it would look like, I thought about this too just now for a little bit. Is ultimately we would need a layer if we're doing this across merchants, right? If we're not just doing it from a one-to-one perspective, maybe there's a world where we have a kind of like a data broker, or like a platform that says, put your data in here, and at varying levels with different pricing, right? Like there could be, for example, your PII data, like your home address, your name, like very specific information. That could be worth, we'll give you $100, 150 for that information, right? For a number for that expires too. Like we'll pay you 150 for your identifying information, your home address, your demographics, and that'll be a contract on this broker, on this platform, for 6 months. And then these are the companies that can leverage it, the different categories. And maybe it's something you control, almost like a preference center for an email. And then if you want to get more like behavioral, a little bit like less identifying information, more like, I live in a certain area, or my favorite hobbies, will only pay you like $30 or $40 for like the next 6 months. So maybe that's a model that might work. Maybe there's some business, I'm sure this is happening now. There's some business or company that's saying, hey, I want to be a data broker between the people and the companies. And what we'll do is that for people, make them feel empowered and respected, and of course pay them money. And from the we'll upcharge the data, obviously upsell, get some margin on that data when we sell it out to companies that want it really badly, like a Walmart, that'll do it at scale, right? They'll be like, let me get your whole population of people that are on your platform.
Yeah, I. It's funny you mentioned this idea. I was actually working on this for a little bit in
Mm.
anticipation of the third party cookie being killed off, because you have to think
Yeah.
about that world as a marketer, right? Like, where are we getting that data from? How can we target you? Do we go back to just very broad marketing, the shotgun approach where or like the fishnet approach where you just try to reel in what you can?
Yeah.
I don't think the companies want that, right? Because it's inefficient marketing dollars. And so I agree with you. I'm going to just like regurgitate kind of what you said,
Yeah.
because I do think that that's the future. I think that what we're going to have is, I believe you called it out in a previous episode where it was like a data, it wasn't a data clean room, but something like that.
Oh yeah, yeah. That's it. Data clean room. Yeah, yeah,
A data clean room. Okay. So
yeah.
I think that's exactly what it's going to be. So like imagine a Chrome extension, right? That's just like always on. You use Chrome. Okay. You agree that any website you're going to go to, it's just going to collect some things about you. Then it's going to build out a profile saying, this is Spencer. And then you're going to get a little email saying, hey, Spence, this is what we think we know about you. Like me as a broker, this is what we think
Hmm.
we know about you. Does this look right? Help us course correct what you want us to know about you, so that we can give you better offers, better discounts, better targeting, because that's ultimately what people want. People
Better
will
experiences.
gladly better experiences. They'll gladly give up a little bit of privacy in exchange for convenience, in exchange for discounts, in exchange for just a better
Hmm.
offers that target me as an individual. And then exactly what you said, this is how I was thinking about it. Approved retailers that you hand select are able to
Hmm.
tap into that data in a very privacy friendly way, and then use it to give you more offers in exchange, and maybe even pay
Yeah.
you, which they have to pay you.
Yeah, yeah. If we include the pay model, it would be interesting to say like, hey, select all means it goes out to everybody in the whole universe of partnerships for that data broker platform, and we pay you a premium price. Like it may not seem like a lot, but maybe like 200 for the 6 months, right? That 6 months time frame. If you're selective about who, then we pay you half of that. So like it gives the end user the leverage, it gives them the levers to decide how much they want to share. But also, the companies now have access to this kind of similar. It's almost like a restricted version of the third party cookie. And it's not, I mean, they're still paying for the data, but the reality is it's like you're paying for advertising or well, you're going to pay for advertising anyway with this data, but like your advertising will be more effective because you're being more targeted, back to giving you the same level of access similar to the third party cookie world, because you've got this universe of cross pollinated information, and you're going to spend less on your advertising, you're going to spend less on your marketing, you're going to get higher returns on your investments in those places. So while it might sound, for this idea of having a broker sounds to a company nowadays probably sounds like nonsense. Like, I don't want to pay somebody for the data. We get it for free. We capture it. You won't be able to, because we keep telling you the third party cookie will die. And this kind of solution may solve for it. Now, who becomes the broker and how they compete, I don't know what that competitive landscape will look like. It'd be interesting, because it would be interesting to see if we had different brokers, what would be the different differentiating value points? Like if I have a broker and you have a broker company and we both collect data, maybe, especially once we get like, let's say we get 80 and above percent of the internet universe, like how are we going to compete? Like what are we going to offer other than that?
Yeah, it's almost like you have broker A, broker B, broker C, and then above that is broker D, who maybe is the larger company who's able to just tap into all of those, or maybe they pay out more to the end user, right? There's all of these different levers. Okay, so we think that in the future there's going to be more. I mean, it's not like data brokers don't exist today, right?
Right, right.
And
It's
it's
not like
and
they
it's
don't
and it's
exist
kind of
today, but not in this model, not where they're
yeah.
paying the end user.
I think like even ad roll companies, right, which is essentially what these sort of are, they charge companies for placements. So it's not like the payment is a brand new model, or pay for data paying for
But it'll be
data
new.
so that they can advertise is a new model that exists.
Yeah, just doesn't pay. Yeah, exactly. Which is great. That's great that it isn't new for the companies, because then it doesn't change much, or there's no excuse to say, oh well, I don't know. This kind of messes with our budget. It's like the key difference here is that we are incentivizing end users to provide their data with actual monetary value in an ethical way. I'm doing air quotes for ethical because some people may not think, they may have different feelings about what's ethical and how you see the value of data. But I think that would be the right thing to do. And I'm pretty sure that most people would be like, as soon as this comes out, or they know there's a platform, they're educated on a platform that will pay them, they'll be like, yeah, I'm never consenting to anything that collects my data for free. No way.
I
No,
agree.
no,
I
no,
agree with that, man.
no.
I think that in the future, it's just gonna people are gonna. We have an episode where we're like, what are we gonna look back on 50 years from now, or like our grandkids are gonna look
Mm-hmm.
back on and think was so bizarre. I think it's gonna be this is gonna be one of those where
Yep.
there was an entire population where people just willingly gave up their data for free and it wasn't worth anything. They got nothing in exchange,
Crazy.
nothing of monetary value, let's say.
Right, right.
So that's interesting. To your other point, it's kind of fascinating to think about those people who do reject all of these. I don't want to give up my data. I don't want to get paid for my data, and
Mm-hmm.
they just become like this grayscale ghost, right? Where
Mm-hmm.
they're just kind of cut off from the advertising ecosystem. What does that barren wasteland look
Right,
like
right.
for an experience?
Yeah, but don't you think that most of the people that are kind of grayed out are also the ones that don't really make those purchases? Like typically, I feel like those are the people who don't typically purchase anyway. Like I think they're too. These are the people that are hyper aware of like the tracking and the ecosystem, like to find like the market ecosystem, and they're like, I don't want to be bothered with ads. I'm gonna pull myself out of this matrix. And I don't think those are customers that will provide high lifetime value anyway. They're the type of people who would probably be like, they probably extra research everything they purchase, probably not loyal to any company. So with that barren wasteland, I don't. I think that just stays as is.
It's interesting to think about the the large number of people who are eh, yeah, okay, I formulated my thought. It's
Yeah.
interesting to think about the group of people, including a lot of people who we know who have for a decade plus now have just given up their data willy nilly, right? Like on social media
Mm-hmm.
or here and there, and
Mm-hmm.
there's this pushback now. People are realizing that my data is worth a lot. More importantly, my privacy is worth a lot, and so there's almost this, I guess, regression where people are saying, I don't feel comfortable with the mistakes that I've made over these years, where all
Mm-hmm.
of my photos, all of my family's photos, all of my deepest thoughts are online
Mm-hmm.
on social media alone. And so I think that there's going to be such a big chunk of people who kind of pull back. And so I think
Mm-hmm.
like those gray scale people that you're talking about, if at the moment it's a small cohort, how much bigger is that going to be as the larger population pulls back
That's a
and
good point.
says, "Ooh, the pendulum has to swing the other way," and that's why you're
Yeah.
getting all of these like privacy products now, right? Like, oh,
Yeah.
we will wipe your data from the internet. It started off as course correct your reputation online, and like brokers
Mm-hmm.
would go in there and they would kind of clean up your reputation and what pops up when you Google your name, but
Mm-hmm.
it's gone much deeper than that now. It's people are realizing, especially now that they're having kids, they're like, I shouldn't have posted all of those photos of my kids. I shouldn't have said this. I
Totally.
shouldn't have said that. So
That
much larger group.
that is that is interesting, but it like solidifies the use case for the incentive. Like those who will like you're right. I think that will grow for sure. I think there will be much more awareness. The grayscale cohort is going to grow, but that means you have to be even better about the data you collect. If you want to, if, as from a marketing perspective or a business perspective, you have to be more accurate. You have to have more data. And something that came to mind just now, even is like from the value of the data. Think about AI is now becoming huge. AI, Gen AI, predictive AI, AI is like a car that can drive us to the future, but it needs gas, and that gasoline is data about people, the population of people, what they do, what they like, how they speak, what makes them do things and what they don't do. Without data, AI doesn't really function well. So that ultimately drives up the stock of everybody's personal data as well. And I can even see, like in the far future, knowing that, and when people are more aware, both from a company perspective and a user perspective, the price of data should go up, especially with AI. So if it's 250 today, like the year after, like data almost becomes almost like a stock market of itself in that platform. It's like, well, actually, I'm a lifetime consumer of let's see, like of Nike products. I'm like 70 years old. I have $3 million in the bank. I'll shop Nike all day. I'm a big fan. How much are you willing to pay for my data to understand me, target me, and match me? Well, my stock, you want to get my data. It's worth $1,000 every 6 months. Like I can
Yeah.
see that happening, right?
There used to be a website back in the day called Clout with a K. Do you remember it?
I remember Cloud. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Where you get a score. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, I
So
forgot
so
about
for,
that.
for those who don't know about it, Clout was this platform where you connect your social media profiles, like your LinkedIn, your Facebook at the time, whatever else, and it calculates, your engagement, how many followers you have, basically your influence is the
It was analytics. Yeah.
aka your cloud score, right? Like what is your cloud
Mm-hmm.
over society? And what you're saying is very uh, it reminds me very much of that, where hey, I'm an influencer. Isn't
Mm-hmm.
it logical that my data is going to be worth so much more, not only for my own personal shopping habits, but if you give me a product that I buy and then I peddle that to my followers, shouldn't that be worth much more? Shouldn't that be
Mm-hmm.
worth, $2,000, right? Things like that. So it's interesting, and then
Yeah.
I almost think that it'll be kind of like a point of pride for people, like the same way cloud showed you that you have influence. Here it'll say, oh, you're
Mm-hmm.
only getting paid 2 cents for your data per like kilobyte. I'm getting paid $2. What does that do?
Yeah.
Does that create
That's
a rift?
interesting. Yeah, you know what's interesting about that too is like that probably ties into in the future that scoring model, that value model of data probably also incorporate. By the way, probably leveraging predictive AI to do these scores anyway, which will be easy enough to do with your social score. Your social score would probably be part of that as well, right? Like, do we want to sell to Max? Who is Max? Is he the president of the biggest volunteer group in the world, and he's also, and we can learn more about him and market to him. We want his influence. Yeah, like all those things. Like scoring is probably the future. Like in general, not to diverge, but like scoring of like our value of data, our social score. Like we're all going to be just scored. I know that sounds dystopian, but it's almost like inevitable. It's the language of AI is to score, and we're moving towards an AI world, and we're all about measurement. So that'll probably be how we measure the value of our data, just scoring, kind of have you mentioned,
Yeah,
like Clout, similar to how Clout did.
it's not that far off, and I
Yeah.
I've noticed that things that get tested in countries like China overseas, after a decade or so, they tend to come to America if they
Mhm.
prove worthy and successful. This exact topic, and if you Google China social score system, the
Mhm.
first thing that comes up, you'll see like the People's Republic of China created the social credit system, which is
Mhm.
sometimes referred to as SCS or China's ranking system, to function as a unified record system that measures businesses, individuals, and government entities to evaluate their trustworthiness. This is, in short, an extreme version of what America has as the credit score, except they
Mhm.
use it in a very fascinating way. They use it as, in some way, as a dating profile. So, like, if you're looking for a mate, you're going to want someone who has similar economic
Score.
status, who has similar values. If you can see that, if you
Mhm.
are, let's say, and if you look at a country like that where there's surveillance everywhere, and you're caught jaywalking, all of a sudden, ding, you just got
Mhm.
demerited, and now all of a sudden, maybe we were going to match
Mhm.
and be soulmates, but hey, you're actually not, you're a criminal in by comparison.
Yeah.
And so that it's an interesting concept to think about whether it's right or
Yeah.
wrong. But like as a social credit system, why wouldn't you use that? What better way is there to find out compatibility between different people?
Well, I can see the scoring actually for that particular use case be relative to you. Like, for example, we can have, I feel like we'll have global scores for like credit, some level of a social score that's going to be masked as something else in the US, like not so explicit. Kind of credits, kind of like how a credit score is in the US. It's a little more subtle, but it's some level of a social score. And but I think that the score for like that type of relationship thing, I think it might be personalized where like you may have jaywalked, but your score didn't get dinged because I jaywalk too all the time. And I'm like, oh, I guess we're all right, cool. But everybody around, but like 50% of the people around us, you did get dinged for. I can see there being a personalized score for like friendships and like more personal relationships. That would be something that just picks up on your behavior, your cues, your words, kind of like how GPT can be your assistant. It'll pick up on all the things that you like, and then it'll connect to other people's assistant, and then see if like, how what's your scoring compatibility score.
Yeah, yeah.
So two criminals might match, like two.
They could, and also like let's say it's one criminal. Let's say it's two criminals, but one of them jaywalked. It's not really a crime, but like
Yeah,
it,
yeah,
it sort of is. That person jaywalk, but they also volunteer on the weekends, right? So there's some
yeah.
give and take there. But just like if you think about it, what is the credit score system in the United States? It's a system to gauge, like it's a short, it's a system to gauge in a very shortcut kind of way
Mhm,
the trustworthiness of that individual, whether that's for dating, whether that's for applying for a house mortgage or an apartment rental, or
mhm,
applying for a job, right? All very similar. They just value different things, and so something like that might sound extreme, but give this 10 years, I am willing to bet that we have some kind of social score system in the United
mhm,
States that's much more in that direction where, I mean, what's the missing link here? Just a dating profile. Hey, connect this to your Bumble profile
mhm,
and or your Hinge profile, and all of a sudden there's just another piece of depth, right? Like, so if you look at a dating profile today, people they realize that it's not just about looks, right?
mhm,
It's about, oh, I can connect my Spotify because music is a very shared thing. If you're into that the same music as I am, all of a sudden we could be part of the same tribe, right?
mhm.
And so if you can add this a component like this, now I know that we're compatible. This algorithm tells me that in a very clean way, like, oh, we have 98% compatibility with each other. Wow, let's do this. Let's meet up.
Yeah, I mean, totally. I think, and by the way, we're out of time, but I wanted to end it there. I think absolutely. I think the future of exactly what you said will be tied to a score. The credit score, credit system that we have is just a precursor to everything we're seeing now. We're seeing it in China. That'll come over. And with that scoring model, with the AI world we live in, your data is incredibly valuable. And be aware of that just for multiple purposes, whether it be for business, operational, for just every day, even for yourself. Like data is absolutely worth something, and don't take it for granted.
Yeah, I would also just push. I mean, I think this message is going to start being more
Mhm,
prevalent in society, but it'll. I think people should demand that retailers pay them for their data, and I think once that message starts echoing through different parts of society, that's how that change will come about. I think that people have to demand that they get paid their fair share. That's it.
yeah.
Wrap it up.
All right. Sounds good. We'll see you in the future.